Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about lossless music and the reason why it's really not that important, but also why you shouldn't really care, especially if you're not an audiophile. Because honestly, most compression, like high quality compression nowadays on even like Spotify, sounds good. Like it sounds serviceable, and I think for most people it's completely fine. But there is the option for lossless as well, and I do prefer lossless because I can notice a slight difference, mainly when it comes to dynamics, but that's about it. Honestly, I can't really notice a difference in anything else besides just dynamics and how it sounds a tad bit clearer, but again, it's pretty hard to tell the difference, and that's why I say it doesn't really matter all that much, especially to people that aren't audiophiles, because you most likely can't tell the difference between, a lossless or a lossy file anyway, so what does it matter if you have a lossless file if you aren't going to really need it? Especially if you have like a spotty data connection. I don't recommend, choosing lossless because, it's just going to make your music experience worse because it takes so much more data to actually stream the music. But the reason why I'm talking about this in the first place is actually because I'm trying to play lossless music on Apple Music. I've had Apple Music for a while, and unfortunately, because I've added so many songs and so many albums on Apple Music, I kind of am stingy to switch back to Tidal or Cobas at this point. But I'm just debating on whether or not to do that because I've actually run into a few issues with playback. For one, I'm trying to play it back on an Android and a Windows machine. I do have a Mac, but playing it on two non-Apple devices is not great. But not only that, it also just sometimes randomly decides to skip like a few hundred milliseconds. It's sort of like a CD skipping if you've ever experienced that. It's sort of like that. It's kind of annoying. It doesn't happen that often. It's pretty infrequent, but it's still annoying enough for me to like get a little annoyed. It's still annoying enough for me to get a little ticked off. But what's even more annoying is that sometimes it'll also just randomly decide to skip an entire track. I don't know why this is the case because no other streaming service I've used does this. Only Apple Music does this in my own experience, and it's annoying. And before you say, oh, it's your data connection, I have a really strong data connection here. Like where I live right now, it's extremely strong, so I don't think the data is the problem. I think just Apple Music is just a little finicky when it comes to, cellular data. But what's even funnier is that even on a Wi-Fi connection, it will still do that like CD skipping thing. I haven't experienced the track skipping thing, fortunately, on Wi-Fi, but again, it's still annoying enough to the point where I might just switch back to Tidal or Cobas. I know I said last video it's not annoying enough, and I'm contradicting myself by saying it is, but again, I would just like to not have that. And with Tidal, with my experience with Tidal, it didn't do this. It didn't like keep trying to play the track, but skipping portions of it in order to keep playing it. On Tidal, it just paused the music and just loaded until the data caught up, which I vastly prefer, honestly, because it doesn't like you don't miss out on like a little detail in your music you might have missed if it skipped a little bit on Apple Music. So again, that's the main reason why I want to go back to Tidal or Cobas. But again, even though I want to go back to these services, it really doesn't matter, especially when it comes to bit depth. I think bit depth is honestly the most like negligible part of lossless music because once you get to 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz lossless, you honestly don't need to go like any higher than that. I know so many people care about like bit perfect and all that, but I mean even then it's really hard to tell the difference. It's even harder to tell the difference between, a higher bit depth, like 192 kilohertz 24-bit file compared to a 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz file compared to, a lossy file compared to a lossless one. Like, it's even harder to tell the difference there. Like, to the point where I can't tell the difference at all. And again, I would like to consider myself an audiophile, and even then, I cannot tell the difference in bit depth between one higher quality file and one lesser quality lossless file. Like, it's extremely hard to tell the difference, and again, that's why I don't think you should really care about, like, bit depth and, like, all that bullshit. Like, it really doesn't matter. And I think a lot of shit in the audiophile scene gets like a lot of snake oil gets through because a lot of people believe that this will sound so much better when Honestly, a lot of people just try to justify their own purchases by saying it makes a difference when most of the time, again, it's them just trying to justify their purchases or it's placebo. One of the two or maybe both. Like it's very, very, extremely hard, if not impossible, to tell the difference between even like a 48 kilohertz file and a 44.1 kilohertz file. Like it's almost impossible, if not impossible. So again, that's why I think you just shouldn't care about like high bitrate lossless music. As long as it is lossless, I think that's all as far as you need to go. And that's why, again, I'm just debating on whether or not to go back to Tidal or Qobuz. And again, it's not even because, oh, there's not high enough bit depth in audio and it's not bit perfect. No, that's not the reason why I want to go back to Tidal or Qobuz. It's just because, it just has a few issues with playback. That's the main reason why I'm just deciding on whether or not to go back. And for the people that have experienced Tidal or Qobuz, and or maybe both, drop in the comments below. Just say what your experience has been with them. I know I've used Tidal for a while now, so I know I know my own experience at this point. But like, just say your own experience. I want to get some different thoughts in the mix, so I can better narrow my decision on which one I will choose, besides Apple Music. I will say it will be a pain to add all my albums to Tidal, and it does suck that Tidal has so much like less foreign music, especially like Japanese music, compared to Apple Music. Like Apple Music has a fucking phenomenal library of Japanese music, and again, on Tidal that's just not the case, unfortunately, for a lot of artists. But I mean, there still are a good amount of Japanese artists, and I think for the most part, like, they have the Japanese artists and the artists in general that I want to listen to on there. So I'm not missing out on a ton, but I'm still missing out on a few artists that I still really like. A big example of is like Susumu Hirasawa. He's the person that did the Berserk soundtrack. Phenomenal artist, not only because he made that soundtrack, but also his albums like Technique of Relief and Siren are phenomenal, but they're not on Tidal or Qobuz. They are only on Apple Music and I think Deezer, which is weird. But again, that's why I kind of am just on the fence. I'm still on the fence on whether or not I should just stick with Apple Music with its playback issues, or just go back to Tidal and risk, not having as many artists available to me as with Apple Music. Which is, again, unfortunate, but I just want to have a smooth playback experience. That's, like, really important to me. And, yeah. That is basically it. I don't have a whole lot else to say. Again, even if you are an audiophile, if you can't tell the difference between, a high bit rate, or not a high bit rate, I mean a high quality lossy file and, like, a lossless file, it doesn't fucking matter what streaming service you choose at that point when it comes to like audio quality. You should just choose it just based on which UI you like better and with which algorithm you think tailors the experience more to you. I don't think you should really care about like lossless and all that if you can't really tell the difference anyway. I'm not trying to be like patronizing and say, oh, you can't tell the difference so you suck. Like, no, I'm just saying, if you can't tell the difference, it shouldn't matter. You shouldn't, make that a deciding factor on what streaming service you should choose next, or if you should give up your current one. Like, just stick with the one that you find the most well adjusted, I guess, to your tastes and what you want. So, yeah, that is basically it, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.